This is my 1927 Model T Ford Roadster pickup. I've had a lot of fun taking this thing to town. The guy came out of the building and he's standing there looking, and I went by and I said, okay, I'll stop, and I backed up, so I just pulled over and talked to him, and pretty soon there was about 15, 20 people had come out of buildings around there, and they were looking at it. So I let them all sit in there and let their buddies take pictures of them as behind the wheel and all that. And it's really fun to be able to share it with people like that. It's a hoot. I took it on a cruise out Highway 336 one day, which is a two-lane, 55-mile-an-hour country highway by farms and fields and all that stuff. I was going along and a pickup came up behind me, and I was obviously slowing him down. So I got to a good spot where he could see to pass me, and I pulled over so he could get by me real easy. And then the next day I saw him in town, and he said, "You were going out 336? I said, "Yeah." And he said, "I was behind you yesterday." I said, "Really?" I said, "Well, tell me this, how fast was I going?" He said, "You were just getting it, man. You were doing about 40 miles an hour." I said, "Holy cow, I wasn't supposed to be going that fast." And the funny thing is, I was on my way out to a friend's house where he was going to help me to align the front end. And so my front end was out of whack, and I'm doing 40 miles an hour, which was top speed on this thing when it was new. And so anyhow, I learned after that, I learned about getting an app on my cell phone that operates as a speedometer by GPS and tells you how fast you're going. And I still want to be going faster than I should, so I use that cell phone to keep me slowed down. The horn on this, it's a klaxon horn is what they call it. And it's almost like an Ooga horn, but as I understand it, the Ooga horns were actually a aftermarket part that somebody created. Because as soon as the Model T came out, people in garages under shade trees outside their houses and stuff, they started finding ways to modify it and make it better. And Henry, he took a lot of those ideas and used them to improve. Well, as you can see, it's kind of interesting here that there's 3 foot pedals on the floorboard, and none of them, by the way, is the gas pedal. You operate the gas up here on the steering column with this lever on the right side of the steering column. And the 3 pedals, I know you're wondering what the 3 pedals are for. So the one there on the far left, that is what we would call a clutch. When you mash it all the way to the floorboard, that is low gear. When you let it halfway out, that's neutral. And when you let it all the way out, then that goes into high gear, and it only has the 2 gears, low and high. Then, of course, the pedal in the middle, that is reverse. And the one on the right is the brake. The interesting thing about the Model T is that the brake works in the transmission on a drum. It does not work on the wheels. The only brakes on the wheels on this are when you pull the handbrake all the way back, then that sets a brake shoe inside the rear wheels to park it and hold it in place. That's the pedals, and on the left side of the steering column is where you adjust the spark. And when you're starting it with the hand crank, you adjust the spark down, you retard it all the way and into the up position, and then as soon as it starts, you adjust the spark according to the RPMs of the engine. Here we have the engine. It's a little 4-cylinder engine, and it's 20 horsepower strong. It does not have a fuel pump, it doesn't have a water pump, and it doesn't have an oil pump. The Fuel is gravity feed from the tank up in the cowling down to the carburetor. The water flows through the system by way of thermal siphon. That's the way it was on the Model T, which dates from 1908 to 1927. And this one is a 1927 model. It's number 14,780 something thousand out of 15 million of these things that were built. They could unload ore off of the barge, put it onto like a coal car on a rail train, on a train, and they'd pull that up to a hopper going into the factory and start dumping that ore into the hopper. And 24 hours later, the ore that went into that hopper was coming out the other end of the factory in a finished car. Well, that's pretty much a tour of the car. You want to let's take her for a spin?
Let's do it.
The original Model T, when they first came out, if I'm remembering correctly, it was about $850. That $850 amounted to about $22,000 in today's money. Also, during the time that the Model T was being produced, Henry doubled the salary of his workers. Don't get the idea that working for the Ford Motor Company putting these things together was any kind of a picnic, because it was a horrendous place to work. It was crowded, it was hot, tempers were always flaring. They had their share of problems. Henry took the idea that other people had already started creating, and he was able to jump to the head of the line to make it available to the masses and put the world really on wheels. I better go get Liz undercover, get her put up for the night. So y'all have a great day. It's been good to see you.